Guys, welcome back to the Roundup podcast with Capital Ranch Real Estate. Welcome. We're happy to have you. Today, we have another awesome and exciting podcast for you. This is Calan Ahrens with Ahrens Ranch and Wildlife. These guys do a little bit of everything. They are one of the foremost ranch management and consulting companies in the state, but they don't just do that. They do professional hunting services, guiding services from the Corpus Christi coast to the Texas Panhandle, West Texas, Aoudad hunts. Calan's just a good guy, and I think you're going to enjoy his perspective on Texas land and ranching, wildlife, and just exactly everything that goes into running a company like he has, which is growing, and we're excited to have him on. Thanks for coming. See you soon. So they closed on that?
Yes. Yeah, they closed on it last week, and actually I head out there tomorrow to start getting work underway.
What does he want to do out there?
We're going to run cattle. We're going to run a yearling operation out there certain months out of the year. That's to kind of stay away from the hunting months, but also give the ranch a chance to rest, give it grass a chance to grow. But we're going to run minimal amount of hunting on native and exotic species that are free roaming out there. And eventually he'll want to breed some super exotics when we build some pens out there. So
it's all low fence right now?
Yeah, it's all 900 acres low fence right now.
Got it. Yeah. How long is it going to take to get the infrastructure set up?
Well, that depends on the willingness of the landowner. We could, at a drop of a hat, pretty much get it done, in a couple of weeks. But the likelihood of doing something like that right now is probably about a 2-year wait, just because the initial purchase of a property like that, a lot of landowners, I recommend that they need to enjoy the property. Instead of diving headfirst into a bunch of projects and then getting overwhelmed, enjoy the property. Let's make some money, get it some return on investment, and then, a couple of years right now, let's get into projects.
That actually sounds like really good advice, because so many people they have ideas when they go visit. They have ideas about what they want to do.
Right.
And even kind of set on it. And then they get out and spend more time on it. Like you said, a couple months later, a year later, they say, you know what? I want to go a different direction. So
exactly.
Did you learn that from experience? Just kind of because it seems like, as the business owner, you would want to say, yeah, let's get started. Let's get to it. And then over time you learn, well, maybe you may change your mind on something.
Yeah. Everybody has a thought or a fairy tale picture of what they want to do with a property. And it's easy to fantasize and romanticize about that until you've been on the property for an X amount of time and you think, man, maybe this idea I had isn't the greatest, or maybe this is a better idea. And so that's where, when we're brought in to give recommendations or to give foresight and management on some of these properties, sometimes they say, hey, let's take a step back, enjoy what you have right now, and then, come back to me and tell me what your new 5 to 10 year goals are, not what you think they are on day one of owning a piece of property.
But this was an ideal situation in which he was contacting you ahead of time, but before he closed on it.
Correct.
Right? He contacted you in the interim when he was negotiating, and you guys went out and visited the ranch and were able to hash out some of those things from the get-go, I guess.
Yeah. So initially, this client had been hunting with me for the past 4 or 5 years, and it made, slight hints that he was looking to sell his company back home in Arizona. And when he did, that he was interested in buying property in Texas as a separate investment, but he had no interest in living here. Right. And so he kept hinting towards me on having me manage it for him and run it and make a turn on investment. And so we've been talking about this for a little while. And right as he closed his business and sold it, he said, get ready. We're getting ready to rock and roll. And so he got in touch with Cody, and they started looking at properties, and it just didn't work out. I was in the middle of hunting aoudad sheep out in West Texas. So I was an out of pocket, if you will, as I tend to always
be. Hard to not be out of pocket when you're in West Texas,
right.
Unless you stand on top of Guadalupe Peak.
Right.
Be your only cell service.
Have a Zoom call on Guadalupe Peak.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he informed me that he was going to start looking at properties. And so inadvertently, I never went with him to go look at any of these ranches. But he sent me the one that him and Cody went and looked at that he finally agreed to close on, asked me my opinion of it. And I just looked at, photos online, and I said, that looks like pretty good country. The area is pretty strong. I'd run a ranch just south of there for a couple years, and so I was familiar with that part of Schleicher County.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I really didn't even look at it until the week before he closed and said, go take a look and let me know what you think.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, if I don't mean this on putting me on a pedestal, but I'm pretty sure if I hadn't been involved, I think that client would have been not apt to go and buy a piece of property, because he felt a sense of encouragement and at ease, knowing that somebody was going to manage his asset and his investment as good or better than he can, from afar.
No doubt. And that is becoming all the more a reality, is clients like the one that you've got, that you're talking about right here. And I'm sure you have many of them. And we see that more and more, where these people are buying ranches as an asset class. And it's amazing that's what it's turned into. And it's really always been that, hasn't it? From the beginning of, since the first sale, umpteen years ago, land's always been an asset class. But it seems like it's really obviously moved that direction, where people are almost, the main reason is for an asset, to hedge other investments and inflation and other things. And you can touch it, it's concrete, it's real. It's not in the market. You can enjoy it, make memories on it. And that's what's cool.
Oh yeah.
So I'm curious, from your side of things, where somebody like this or other clients like this live out of state, what do you see in your perspective their reason is for wanting land in Texas? He could go, and these folks can buy anywhere. You could go to Montana, you could go to Idaho, Utah, Arizona. I mean, who knows, right? But there's a lot of cool places to buy ranches.
Oh, absolutely.
Why Texas in your experience?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's always been this innate, romanticized, fantasized idea of being a landowner in Texas, right? And there's an innate historic pride in saying, I own land in Texas, right? And as Texans, we're prideful of that. We're prideful to be from Texas, and everybody else wants a piece of Texas. They want a piece of that history and a piece of that romanticized, fantasized idea. And so I think that has some of that innate background. But more so, I think Texas has more of a favorable economy versus some other states. Not as much regulations and governmental issues when it comes to regulatory ideas, when it comes to livestock or even exotic wildlife management. It's just a real favorable state and very favorable to the landowner. It's a very, very property right driven state. And so I think a lot of that has a reason to do with why people are so driven to own land in Texas. And I know my client's example, for one thing, the reason why he didn't buy in Colorado or Montana, because he was looking up there, he goes, what am I going to do with it? I don't know anybody in Colorado or Montana, but he knew little old me in Texas would, be here to help him take care of it. And so there's a lot of different aspects, and every individual is going to be different in the reason why. But, some of those things that I mentioned are, in my mind, in my opinion, the main reason why someone from out of state's looking to move to Texas or even buy property in Texas to invest.
Right. I think you're right. The romanticized notion of being a cowboy in Texas, even if it never, even if somebody doesn't actually saddle up on their horse and do a cattle drive, I think that's something that people think about from a young age. If you were to ask any kindergartner or elementary school aged boy at some point or another what they want to do when they're older, at some point they're going to go through that cowboy phase. I want to be a cowboy. And in their head, whether they know it or not, it's in Texas.
Oh yeah.
And you see the same thing when some folks retire or choose what they want to do with their free time as an adult. If you were to ask these individuals, you'd get the same answer that they were when they were a kid. It always comes back around. They say, I want to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
And good on them, man. I mean, that's what life's about, and that's what Texas is about. You get to have that freedom to do what you want.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
that's
there's
what
nothing.
land ownership provides.
Yeah, there's nothing better than having a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise over your front porch, looking over your land.
Mm-hmm.
And you may never step foot in a saddle, and may never work a set of calves through a pen, but you can still sit there on your front porch, have a cup of coffee, and imagine what that land would look like with that going on.
That's right. But there's a new kind of a cowboy now that's evolved over the last decade or two of the exotic ranching cowboy.
Right. Exotic deer cowboy.
That's right, which is a different breed,
Right.
but ever more popular. So how long have you been doing this?
I've been on my own for 7 years now.
Mhm.
Before that, I was at King Ranch in Kingsville, Texas.
Got it. I want to get into that, but I want to ask first, give your preview of your company, just what it is that you do.
So there's 3 different aspects mainly within our company, and there's a lot. The 30,000-foot view, there's 3 aspects. There's the hunting side that kind of commingles with the ranch management side. We do a lot of commercial hunts across the state, which to include free-range aoudad, mule deer, pronghorn, whitetail, 40 different species of exotics, Rio Grande turkey, dove, I mean, you name it. If it's legal to hunt, we're hunting it.
Mm-hmm.
And we cater to about 250 plus or minus hunters a year. So, substantial amount.
Yeah.
The other bullet point or side of the business is the exotic game management, capture, and sales. And that's probably our biggest portion of the business of the operations, simply because we're moving 3,000, 4,000 head of animals a year, and that's everything from giraffes to Cape buffalo to axis, black buck, kangaroos, emus, you name it. One man's surplus is another man's investment. And so we manage those assets just like, we would on a ranch, but we manage them from one ranch to another and transporting and darting, medicating through veterinarian client relationship. So that's another big facet of it. And then lastly, the main kind of thing that's been going on lately is these ranch management, ranch consultant, wildlife retainer type things that we've been doing, which is really bolstered and gotten quite large over the past 2-3 years. And the reason for that, I'm not real sure, but I can tell you that there is quite a few. I can tell
Sorry.
you that's all right. That's why I turned mine off earlier.
I thought I did. I must not have.
All good.
We can edit that out.
Yeah. But no, that's the reason behind that. I'm not quite sure, but I think a lot of people have all these assets and they have all these exotics and they have, this ranch that they want to improve or they want to get their most bang for their buck. They don't know how. And so they need an outside source with a separate idea or a separate outlook to come in and say, let's try this or let's look at this. But yeah, those are the 3 main aspects of the company: the hunting side, exotic wildlife, and then the ranch and wildlife consulting.
Got it. Now, how did you get into this? That's a big question. But how did you end up where you're at today, 7 years with your own company? Where were you born and raised, and kind of walk us through your life?
Yeah. So, July 26, 1992, I was born in Fredericksburg and ended up bouncing around the state as a kid. Grew up in Corpus and Alpine, 2 different parts of the state.
I was going to say, wait a minute. How do you do that?
Well, when your families are split at a young age, you spend time in both parts.
Talk about the best of both worlds as a kid,
right.
Man. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I get to go fishing in Corpus and then grow up hunting all that out in Alpine.
Yeah,
There's
that's
nothing
the dream
better.
right there.
Yeah.
Cool.
It kind of fell in steps, now in my 30s. But so kind of fast forward, I've already grew up in a hunting and wildlife ranching background, although it kind of skipped a generation. My dad and my mother, they really didn't follow the ranching background, but I followed my grandfather's footsteps in cattle ranching and my enjoyment for that, being in the outdoors, and I always liked hunting when I was a kid. And, I decided after I graduated from Alpine High School in 2010 to go to A&M Kingsville on a rodeo scholarship, riding bulls, while I was a Texas FFA state officer. And so anyway, went down there for wildlife recreation entrepreneurship and started working on the King Ranch. And that's where I really cut my teeth. That's where I learned a lot of experience on both the wildlife and the cattle side. And then, shortly after leaving King Ranch, after a few years, I went to work for a company out of San Angelo, kind of helping with some outfitting stuff here and there, kind of bolstered some more of my hunting background. And eventually I decided, you know what, if I can do this for other people, I can do this for myself, and for people. And so that's when I decided in February of 2017 to go off on my own and start Ahrens Ranch and Wildlife LLC.
Very good. And it's been a good experience.
Been a fun ride.
How many guys do you have and girls? How many folks do you have working for you now?
Yeah, so including myself, I've got 5 full-time employees. Matter of fact, one of our ranch and wildlife technicians just started today, and we've got 16 part-time guys. That's going to be guides, catch crew, helicopter pilot, stuff like that. That's everything from guides, chefs, you name it, ground crew, trailer handlers, drivers. So it takes an army to drive this thing, because it used to, I did it all myself. Yeah. I'd have an Axis catch job on a Monday, and I had to be in Presidio, Texas on a Tuesday to guide a hunt to be done by Saturday, and then had another catch job when I got home after I spent the night Sunday.
That's a lot of time on the blacktop.
And you know what? I thought whenever I started expanding and hiring new people, I thought, well, I'm gonna have more time at home. Just ask my wife. It's not the truth.
I have a question. So from 0 employees to how many you said for part-time and full-time?
Yeah, we're at about 22.
Okay. From 0 employees to 22, is there a difference between managing these ranches and managing people? Because now you're in charge of 22 people. So do you find any parallels between managing ranches and managing people?
Yeah, I mean, management is the key word in that. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're managing people, or you're managing inventory, or managing exotics, or managing is being able to correctly handle that asset or handle those individuals. And so there's a direct correlation in that bad management can cause strife. And so I take pride in knowing that I'm delegating some of my stuff, like over to my operations manager, Morgan Tyler. He helps with a lot of that delegation, and that comes with leadership, and that comes through management. Sometimes people think a better manager is somebody that's got their thumb over the button, and a lot of times you gotta give the reins. Sometimes you can choke a horse by pulling back on the reins too much. But give them reins, delegate appropriately, and allow people to be able to strive at their position. And that was hard to do in the very beginning of my business when I started hiring people, because my name's on the side of these pickups. And no one's going to work harder than I guarantee you than I will at the end of the day, because I got to make sure that these individuals get their salaries, that they get their health benefits, and that they take home that cash. And so, I will always strive harder to work, more than these individuals, but also expect a little bit back from them, as we make these delegations.
You mentioned, the thumb on whomever you're managing, and it seems like the manager, typically the leader, is the one that thinks the thumb is the best. The person that's being led, they don't think that that's the best way.
Exactly.
And I think animals are probably the same way, right? We have a natural tendency to try to overpower and overbear the natural environment. And we see this with ranching all the time. You can overdo something. And it seems like maybe that if the systems are in place, then the less interaction, the better. The animals should be able to do what they need to do and how they do it naturally. And we provide the barrier as that steward so that they can operate within the systems that we give them.
Absolutely.
And manage is the same way, right?
Yeah.
I think that's great. I never really thought about the correlation between those two things.
Yeah, and it's like, if you're working cattle in a good set of pens, the best way to move them forward is their natural flow. Anytime you try to push and pinch and parade, you have issues. They're going to turn back on you in a shoot. But if you have a natural flow, okay, and it doesn't matter if it's with exotics or livestock or if it's people, you have natural flow, things just flow better. And if you start trying to force things, that's when you start butting heads.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's the one thing that I've had to come to terms with too, because you always want to feel like you're in control and you always want to have the reins right here. But sometimes just go with what's natural and try not to buck the system too much.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Let's back up to the King Ranch. It seems like a good place to get things started.
Yeah.
So you ended up graduating and you go to work in San Angelo and then eventually at the King Ranch. Is that the order of that? How that went?
So when I was at A&M Kingsville, I actually was working at King Ranch
Mm-hmm.
In a hunting lease. And then when I graduated, I left and went to San Angelo to go run a ranch. And I was there for about a year, and then King Ranch called and said, we have a cattle manager position open in Laurellis over along Baffin Bay between Kingsville and Corpus Christi. Mm. And so I left San Angelo at that time, running that ranch, and went and took that job down there at King Ranch.
What was that like?
It's great. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't have traded it for the world. I'd tell my wife if I'd have been married and had kids at the time, I probably would have never left. Mm-hmm. It's a really neat ranch. It's a really neat history background. And I learned a lot of processes and managerial skills through that position because you had to adapt and overcome in ways that you don't ever get tested in a smaller operation. Mm. When you're dealing with 120,000 acres and 120 windmills and solar panels and 20 horses and 6 cowboys, sometimes that can get a little overbearing at 21 years old, and as the youngest manager in the King Ranch history, and so, but it was an interesting job. And I credit a lot of what I learned and a lot of what I do now from, my past experiences there.
Mm. So they run their ranch a little different than other operations because they're so big. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
This is a full-blown business, right? So
they're a direct corporation.
Talk about how that style of ranch management, just in such scale, and being that it is, it's a business, right? Mm. And all ranching is business, but you said it's a corporation. I mean, what are some things that people may not understand about how the King Ranch manages and operates, if they've never been to it or they don't know much about it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just like basic ranching 101. The only thing different with them is there's going to be a little more with needing to have Monday morning meetings in the cowboy department, and you got some health stuff that you go over, and protocol and safety meetings, and so it's still ranching. There's a lot more corporate involved. Mm-hmm. And so, that's probably something that a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot of corporate involved, but they have to because of how many people are. I mean, I think they've got 120 or something cowboys, and that's a lot. That's not including what's in turf grass. It's not including what's in the farm side, infrastructure, so there's a lot of things that directly correlate to why they have to run like a corporation and not like a traditional ranch where you and I may operate at. Mm.
And then going back a little further, FFA, you were in the FFA. Mm-hmm. Do you think that was a good experience for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I joined FFA in Alpine, my ag teacher, Doug Fox, which he'd kill me if he knew I said his first name just now. But anyway, Mr. Fox, Mr. Fox, he got me involved in an early age and, kind of grew me into, different leadership and CDE activities and stock showing in FFA. And it really made me blossom in my high school years. And I had a desire to become a Texas FFA state officer. And really that kind of helped me come out of my shell to learn how to publicly, speak and be able to write speeches, be able to do job interviews. And so it gave me a lot of tools that a lot of people don't ever get. One of the things that people are more scared of than dying is speaking. And so I've found a way that I can speak in front of 8,000 people if I had to, and there's no problem. But yeah, when I was elected into state FFA office as vice president in 2010, right when I graduated, and I made my year of service from 10 to 11. I actually spent a lot of time here in Austin because our FFA headquarters is here. But yeah, I highly recommend, whether it's 4-H or FFA. Either one of those organizations are great for young individuals, and I attribute a lot of my growing up and being who I am today to that and what I did at the King Ranch.
That's good. A lot of leaders gone through the FFA,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
as young kids and young adults.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So when you left the King Ranch and you started your own company, what was the main focus that you went with at the beginning?
So at the beginning, I was more focused on the hunting side of things, and I always attribute to our growth to that hunting, because that's where we got a lot of our contacts. That's where we met a lot of people. And so we had a lot of clients come through. I think that first year in business, I probably had 40 or 50 hunters.
Awesome.
And I ran them all myself.
Yeah.
And then from there, these landowners I was doing business with, they had a need to either need more investment on livestock, exotic game, or they needed to catch some surplus that we weren't hunting. And so I saw this void. And instead of me finding somebody else to go out and do it, I said, well, I can do it. And so then it became a one-stop shop operation. And so, okay, well, I'll come in and I'll hunt for you, and I'll bring some clients, but I'll also capture some of your surplus. Or if you need some, I'll bring some out here for you. And so then it became easy for me to put these bids out to ranches and say, I can make you money on both sides. And so that's where it started, and then it just kind of grew from there.
How many folks were doing what you were doing when you started? The business of what you do is pretty small,
Mm-hmm.
as far as really high quality companies.
Right.
So is that fair? Was it a small business when you started?
Well,
what I mean, I guess, is
Yeah.
that there's not really a blueprint for what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. No, we're kind of breaking the mold as we go.
Yeah.
And I think there's lots of companies that are duplicating what we're doing, and I've seen that over the past 5 years, and I think that speaks a lot, But in the beginning, there was a lot of hunts being run by outfitters, and you'll notice my name doesn't have outfitting in it because I view our company as a management company, not as a outfitting company. We use hunting as a management tool on a commercial sense. But we still run professional services. But to have a company that was doing hunting and doing exotic game trapping, sales and stuff, there was a few that I don't think on the scale that we were looking to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, 7 years ago, there was individuals that were running hunts, and there was individuals that were catching and moving and selling animals, but no one was really trying to offer both in a one-stop shop fashion,
Right.
not on the large scale that we were looking to do.
Right.
And of course, if you'd have told me 7 years ago that we'd be doing what we're doing now, I'd say you're crazy,
Yeah.
check you in the loony bin.
That's awesome. It's amazing when our reality exceeds our dreams,
Absolutely.
And that sounds like the case for you guys. Yeah. You guys do a lot in a lot of different areas of the state. You're not really bound by any geographical location, right?
No.
That's one of the main differences, I think, between your company and maybe other people that do what you do, is they kind of maybe tend to their local area,
Mm-hmm.
which it's kind of operates the same way real estate does in that respect. It's most people stick to their own area, but it's a big state.
Yeah,
lot to see, a lot of land.
Yeah. There's an innate attraction to capitalism, right? And so you can only do so much within a certain area, but you can be really good at that certain area.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times people mistake growth for lack of quality.
Okay.
And so, what I've always tried to do is strive that we don't ever lose that sense of quality as we continue to grow. How we operate on 300,000 acres in West Texas is the same as how we operate on 20,000 in South Texas. There's the reason why we've hired an area manager in West Texas, because he's out there full time. That's the reason why we've got, operations manager that's kind of helping out, tend to things that I can't tend to, because we have grown, but we also want to keep that same quality. And I think that speaks, and even in real estate too. Not everybody in capital ranch real estate can be everywhere at once, but that's why there's different real estate agents throughout the state.
There you go. Well said. So a lot of what you guys do right now is the consulting, as you mentioned, and you're still got your hands in all the different buckets that your business has been built on. But what's something that's kind of getting you fired up lately, or has for a while, that you personally really enjoy? If you could kind of put one thing on top of the other.
Yeah, well, kind of if I had to choose one to talk about, it would be, obviously managing these exotics. I dearly love messing with animals, and husbandry is a big thing to me. If it wasn't for these animals, we wouldn't be able to put food on our table for my wife and my kids. And so I have an innate love for all things wild, native, and exotic. You know, being able to watch these animals propagate, being able to watch endangered species grow. I've got myself a herd of Barasingha, and they're endangered in their native country back in India. And so being able to watch those babies be born and go, you know what, I've got a piece of an endangered species that's propagating, that we're not hunting, that we're watching, and then we can then sell that surplus to another individual that also wants to propagate. You feel pretty small, because you're doing something much bigger than yourself. And I guess another small thing that I've enjoyed lately is catching, moving, and selling a boatload of aoudad sheep out of West Texas. That country is so delicate and so vast, and it's already strife with drought. But for us to go into these ranches and catch 1,000, 2,000 head of aoudad and make these landowners money, all the while protecting that wild resource that is delicate, that desert environment is more delicate than anything else in the state. Maybe not quite as delicate as marshlands along the coast, but it is very, very delicate. I enjoy that as well because, Texas Parks and Wildlife would rather go out there and shoot them from a helicopter, and I'm trying to retain an investment that they don't even have money in, but trying to make them $1 all the while saving their property.
Let's talk about the aoudad sheep. First, I've never heard anybody describe West Texas as delicate. When you're in West Texas,
everything bites, pokes, pricks, and sticks.
It doesn't feel delicate. Right. You feel delicate. Well, where am I walking?
Exactly.
Where's the snake at? And so why do you call West Texas delicate?
It's the ecosystem itself. It's delicate. When you've got a piece of property out there that has got maybe 12 inches of rain in a year, and you try to run cattle on it, or you try to run goats on it, and then you got to compete with aoudad sheep by the thousands. That's what makes it delicate. That's what makes it delicate, in a sense that it's hard to compete with that kind of competition when you're trying to be a livestock manager, but also a natural resource manager. If you're trying to raise big mule deer, and you're trying to raise big elk, and you're trying to raise your quail, all the while you haven't had any rain, and the aoudad are just going to continue to eat it down, that's what makes it delicate. That's what makes it hard, because it takes a long time for that country to bounce back. Not like some areas in the hill country that we may have a drought, have no grass, but you give it a good 5-6 inch rain and it'll bounce right back up.
Right.
I've seen areas out west that it may get a 2-inch rain and you'll see one little weed pop up.
Right.
It's been ate down to a point that it needs a lot more work and a lot more care than other ranches.
What's the history of the aoudad sheep?
They were first brought into areas of West Texas. Well, actually brought into the Texas Panhandle in about 1940. Turned loose up there in the Palo Duro State Park.
So I'm from around there.
Yeah, that's right.
So you see aoudad sheep very rarely. You don't see them in the big herds like you might expect in the Palo Duro Canyon ecosystem. But they're there. But I did not know that that's where they were first brought.
Yeah, that's where they were first extirpated, was there, and then they were brought into the Trans-Pecos region in about the 1950s. Originally, they were released in like the Glass Mountains and the Shinati, and I believe maybe up in the Sierra Vieja mountain range.
Why?
Well, landowners saw those as being a potential revenue. A lot of soldiers from World War II seen them while they were in Africa, and and a lot of the Barbary Coast where these sheep are from, mimics what West Texas looks like. And, a lot of the vegetation, a lot of the cliffs, kind of the arid environment. And so anyway, these landowners thought, this would be a good opportunity to watch them propagate and then retain, some money on them. And boy, were they right, because they propagate well. It's kind of the same aspect that Richard King had with nilgai down in South Texas. He saw these nilgai as being, potential money-making sources, hunting income. And I believe the first few nilgai he got was from a zoo here in the United States. And that's how the nilgai population first got started, was Richard King turned them loose down there in the Norris division of the King Ranch.
A little earlier than the 50s. Was it around the 30s or
Yes.
40s?
Yep.
Okay. So the aoudad sheep get brought in around the 50s into the Palo Duro Canyon ecosystem, and then later into West Texas, and they've propagate and they have babies and more babies, and now it's a problem.
Right.
And do they provide any value to the ecosystem?
To the ecosystem, no.
Got
to
it.
the rancher, yes. But there's got to be an even balance.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about stocking rates and you're talking about animal units and you're looking at a piece of property and you say, we got 20,000 acres and we can run a cow to 120 acres out there, just, throwing numbers out there. Well, you got to factor in how many aoudad are coming through at a given time too. And, they become an economic value to a rancher to an extent, but sometimes too many is too many.
Mm-hmm.
And the issue we've run into is there's always hunters that are wanting to shoot and go after the big, burly, old, mature rams. And they're lined up like cordwood wanting to hunt them. But no one really wants to go out to hunt a ewe, and so we've been left with the question, what do we do? How do we manage this? And again, Texas Parks and Wildlife's adage to it is, let's just go shoot them from a helicopter and leave them lay. Well, I decided to go a different route and, offer a money-making stream for these individuals and trap them and sell them to where these landowners are making pretty good money from an investment that's just eating their grass up.
So where are you selling them?
All over. I've sold them up to Missouri, Oklahoma. We get a general bill of health and tag these sheep, and we can move them out of the state. Typically as far from West Texas as possible.
Yeah, fair enough.
But no, there's always ranches that are wanting these animals in a high fence situation.
Right.
When we catch these animals out of a free range environment, they are going to a high fence situation.
So I'll paint a picture for you, a scenario, and you can answer the question. And this is actually a real conversation I was having with somebody recently. They have a ranch in West Texas. They raise cattle. That's their business. And they do some hunting. It's not their bread and butter. They'd like to raise these cattle. And they have, let's just say, 5,000 to 10,000 acres. And they're having a hard time raising these cattle on this ranch because, among other things, the aoudad are taking everything that the cows are going to eat. And so they don't know what to do. So what should they do?
So I would recommend a trapping initiative, figuring out where these sheep are watering, figuring out how these sheep are traveling through the property. And then we set up these round mobile traps. They're operated off cellular technology. I can get on my phone and I can pull up a trap in Presidio County right now and watch sheep filtering in there. But you can do that and capture those animals. And, most aoudad ewes are bringing about $100, $125 a piece on the open market right now. Well, if we split that with a landowner and you got to catch 400 or 500 of them, that's not bad. You're managing a resource, you're taking them off of the landscape, and you're making $1.
Mm-hmm. And giving them to somebody that wants to use them in a beneficial way for them.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a win-win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everybody wins.
Yeah, right. Okay. And so when you go and capture these animals, describe that.
So when we drop on these animals, when I say drop on these animals, we press a button and the gates drop. We also utilize other forms of capture, darting, helicopter, net guns. But when we're talking about trapping aoudad, 9 times out of 10, we're using these remote traps. But When we drop on them, then we head out there with pickups and trailers, and we have an alley system with these traps. We'll back up to the alley system, and then myself, employees are in the trap, and we run those sheep into the trailer, get a head count on inventory, run them into the barn. In the barn, we've got 12-foot sides, alleyways, different dividers. We feed and water them, and then we inventory them, figure out how big the rams are, how many ewes there are, how many babies, and then we basically have processed that load, and then we start calling buyers to say, hey, this is what we've got, this is what we've got available, and this is the money on them.
Mm. That's a resilient animal.
Yeah, you ought to get in a trailer with one.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. It's a cool animal. I mean, it really, I think it is.
Yeah.
I see the allure to them, and I certainly also see the damage and devastation that they can do.
Right.
To
yeah. It's funny because I'm playing devil's advocate here because I love aoudad so much. I've got them on my binder here, and I mean we hunt a lot of them. They're one of my favorite creatures in this whole world to hunt. But at the same time, too, we have to realize that something has to be done to protect and preserve a delicate part of the state of Texas. And we've got free range and aoudad in Eagle Pass. We've got free range and aoudad in Lakey and Campwood and Del Rio. And so just because it's an issue there, it doesn't mean it's not going to be an issue elsewhere. These are, just like axis deer, and I just visited with their landowner today. They're overrun with axis deer in Sisterdale along the Guadalupe River. It's not just aoudad. It's animals in general. We have to manage these resources, or they're going to get out of control.
That's true, and that's a very good, just overarching statement. Not just animals, but with the growth that we've had here in Texas and most of the urban areas in the country, we have to manage our resources. We have to be forward thinking. And it sounds like folks, and I don't know much about the aoudad business, but it sounds like folks have not been as forward thinking with some of this as they could be. So good on you for thinking about different ways to manage that resource.
Yeah. Well, most people don't realize they have a problem until it's too late.
Fair enough. What are some other things that you see people get into as far as the ranching side of things, and then kind of end up backpedaling a little bit and saying, maybe we should take it a different way?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question and topic, because a lot of times people get into something that they don't have a lot of education about, and they get too deep in the sauce, if you will, and so then they have to backpedal and reassess. A lot of that may come in with like investing in certain exotic species and not knowing what goes in a low fence, what goes in a high fence, what animals can go with what. And I'm not talking about traditional ranching, obviously. I mean, most people that are traditional ranching have an idea, but you have a lot more people that are going to backpedal and change heart in something that they don't have a whole lot of knowledge about.
Right.
And so that's where a lot of people give us a call.
After the fact.
After the fact,
yeah.
Correct, yes. Very few people have foresight to say, I'm going to call this guy real quick.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, I mean, and that comes with anything in life. Sometimes we find ourselves getting into something that we don't know nothing about, and then we have to take a step back and reassess our situation before we go trudging forward.
Mm. So with the exotic animal market, what have been some reasons that folks have gotten away from the traditional ranching and moved into the exotic propagation market, in your experience?
Yeah. So that's another good question. In my opinion, I think a lot of people are doing both at some point. You got some ranches that are raising cattle, but they're also raising axis, or they're raising scimitar horned oryx or sable or kudu. But you see a lot of these new ranches that are being bought by individuals this day and age, and they don't have the innate want and ability to raise cattle or sheep or goats or have horses. And so, then they turn to, well, what can we do? Well, exotic game is still considered domestic livestock in the state of Texas. And so you can still get your ag exemption through raising exotic game. You can still get tax breaks, same as you would for the traditional ranching. but you can do it by raising sable antelope or Inyala or bongo. And so a lot of people enjoy seeing those animals on their property and getting those tax breaks versus raising 50 head of black Angus. And so it just goes into there's an old traditional way of ranching, and then we've got this kind of new style of ranching. When we talked about the new exotic deer cowboys, you've got this new innate idea of, okay, I can still ranch, but I'm going to ranch with exotic game.
What if you could put a figure on the growth of new people entering that market in the last decade? Just how big is it getting?
Well, I can tell you not to get too deep in the politics of it, but because of the CWD issue and Texas Parks and Wildlife doubling down on deer breeding operations, they have single-handedly increased our exotic market, but if not double, probably triple, because all these whitetail individuals have gotten out of the market because of all the overregulation from the government and have gotten into exotic breeding. And we saw a huge increase. I mean, prices in this market had never seen these kind of numbers in 10, 15, 20 years like we had the past 3 years. Now it's kind of leveled off because the buying power, all these people that were looking to purchase inventory, now we've kind of hit that, but now we've kind of leveled off. But the market's still incredibly strong. There's growing numbers every day of people that are wanting these animals and that are wanting to get into this business. Do I know what that total number is, that growth? No, but I know it's exponential. I sit on the board of directors for Exotic Wildlife Association, and it's amazing to see just in the past 5 years what this industry has done. And in return too, this industry is creating a lot of money and a lot of jobs within the state of Texas.
Certainly. And it seems providing real value to these animals.
Absolutely.
In addition to that, which, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you know some of these success stories from a specific breed of animal?
Yeah, well, we could go back to the Three Amigos as far as Addax, Dama, Scimitar Horned Oryx. They were originally listed from the United States government, placed them and said, they're an endangered species and, can't hunt them. And so that took an adverse reaction. Landowners did not like that toll. And so, but once we got that reversed, you see a huge increase in these propagation efforts between Addax, Dama, and Scimitar. We've got more Dama and Addax and Scimitar in this state of Texas than there is anywhere else in the world. But when you put a real value of an animal, something that you can turn in for a monetary value, you put a reason for that animal to be propagated. When that animal doesn't have a reason to be propagated because it has no value, that's when no one wants it. That's when no one wants to raise these animals, because it takes feed, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes busting water troughs in deep December and January. So with a value attached to these animals like Scimitar Horned Oryx, like the Dama, like the Addax, and this can be directly correlated to hunting. This is the same thing with the South African hunting model. When you put hunting prices on these animals, game breeders want to raise them. And that's what's saving a lot of these species, is that actual monetary value that's on those animals.
Where do you see this market going in the next 10 years?
Buckle up. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see the grow exponentially. I don't think we're going to see the rise like we did the past 3 years. I think we're a pretty good plateau on market. I think we'll see some animals rise, some animals fall. But as far as overall growth in the state and even in the United States, as far as how many people are going to get in the industry and what these animals are going to do, I think you're going to see some major uptick. I don't, unless Texas Parks and Wildlife tries to do something to interfere. but I think we're going to see a really, really strong outlook moving forward with this organization, with these animals in this industry.
Is there any other states that come close to what Texas does in this capacity?
There's some exotics in just about every state in the United States, but I don't think any state comes close. Louisiana's coming in close, and they just through Exotic Wildlife Association just started their own chapter of EWA, and so we're excited about that. I would say a couple of states that ring first in my mind, maybe Oklahoma, Louisiana, Florida. A lot of exotics in there, but I don't think anybody comes close to Texas.
Were they the earliest on some of this?
I believe so.
Yeah. With the stories like you mentioned with the King Ranch and the Neil Guy and some of these other things. So when you look at the industry moving in that direction, and you look at your company, what do you anticipate your company's trajectory to look like? Of course, growth, but what would you like to see, and what are you excited about within your particular business and your particular company?
Yeah, that's I appreciate that question. I think there's going to be a direct correlation of growth between my company and the industry itself. I think that has more to do with our reputation and our ability to provide on promises to landowners and to do a good job and to keep animals foremost in our mind and keeping their welfare and husbandry in mind. That has nothing to do with me as a person, as an individual. I started the company, but the way things are now, it's more of our reputation and the people we hire taking care of. If we take care of good people, good things take care of us. And so, I see both the industry and our company growing alongside.
That's great. And where can people follow along with what you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, they can follow us on Instagram at Ahrens Ranch and Wildlife, or they can follow me personally on Facebook, Calan or Calan Ahrens. And then we have our company Facebook page, Ahrens Ranch and Wildlife. I think we're on TikTok too.
Uh-oh. I saw you dancing on TikTok.
Uh-oh. Well, I wonder how long ago that was.
Watch out. No, I'm just kidding. One last question. If you could send a message to a landowner,
Mm-hmm.
to somebody that's interested in becoming a landowner,
Mm-hmm.
more of a philosophical message, what would you implore them to do, or what would you say to them?
Yeah, you kind of put me on the spot with that question. A potential landowner, somebody that's looking to buy, I would probably give an advice as far as do what you love to do and find something that you might enjoy on your property. Have that in your mind and your foresight before you go to close on a property. If you enjoy fishing, don't buy a piece of property in Alpine, Texas. Make sure you got a pond, or you got a river or something, or you got bay frontage. But if you enjoy something, incorporate it into what you're buying. Make sure you enjoy it every day, every chance you can. Because some people, they only get to buy one piece of property in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So some people are fortunate to be able to buy more. But if you only get to buy one property, make sure it's something that you like, and make sure it's something you can enjoy, and then incorporate, like raising exotic game or raising cattle or have your horses, but incorporate these things that you love to make you like it even more for more years down the road.
I think that's a good message to close this thing out. It's about having fun, man.
That's right.
We forget sometimes when we're out running and gunning that this is fun at the end of the day.
Yeah.
There's nothing more fun and more exciting than getting to see these animals, like with what you do, getting to be on these ranches. It's a dream come true.
The only other thing I'll say is just don't take the fun out of it.
That's good, man. Well, you guys are doing a great job. I commend you for what you're doing, and just appreciate you very much. And thank you for coming on today.
I've enjoyed it, man.
We'll see you down the road.
Yes, sir.
All right.